when any sense of our records intense pleasure or pain, when any sense of ours records intense pleasure or pain, then the whole soul is drawn by such impressions into that one sense, and seems to lose all other powers. And thus do I refute the error that asserts that one soul on another burns in us. And for this reason, when we see or hear whatever seizes strongly on the soul, time passes, and we lose it unaware. For that which senses is one faculty, and that which keeps the soul intact another, the first, as it were, bound, the second free. To this my own experience bears witness, for while I listened to that soul and marveled, the sun had climbed, without my least awareness, to 50 full degrees of its noon peak, when, at one point along the way, that band cried out in chorus, "Here is what you seek." Often when grapes hang full on slope and ledge, the peasant, with one forkful of his thorns, seals up a wider opening in his hedge than the gap that we found there in that wall of stone, up which, leaving that band of souls behind, my guide led, and I followed, we two alone. Go up to San Leo, or go down to Noli. Go climb Bismantova, 2 legs suffice. Here nothing but swift wings will answer wholly. The swift wings and the feathers, I mean to say, of great desire led onward by that guide who was my hope and light along the way. Squeezed in between 2 walls that almost meet, we labor upward through the riven rock, a climb that calls for both our hands and our feet. Above the cliff's last rise, we reached in time an open slope. Do we go right or left? I asked my master, or do we still climb? And he said, Take not one step to either side, but follow yet, and make way up the mountain till we meet someone who may serve as guide. Higher than sight the peak soared to the sky. Much steeper than a line drawn from mid-quadrant to the center was the slope that met my eye. The climb had sapped my last strength when I cried, "Sweet father, turn to me. Unless you pause, I shall be left here on the mountainside." He pointed to a ledge a little ahead, that wound around the whole face of the slope. "Pull yourself that much higher, my son," he said. His words so spurred me that I forced myself to push on after him on hands and knees until at last my feet were on that shelf. There we sat, facing eastward, to survey the trail we had just climbed, for oftentimes a backward look comforts one on the way. I looked down first to the low-lying shore, then upward to the sun, and stopped amazed, for it was from the left its arrows bore. Virgil was quick to note the start I gave when I beheld the chariot of the sun driven between me and the north wind's cave. "Were Castor and Pollux," he said, "in company of that bright mirror which sends forth its rays equally up and down, then you would see the 12-toothed cogwheel of the zodiac turned till it blazed still closer to the bears, unless it were to stray from its fixed track." If you wish to understand why this is so, imagine Zion and this mount so placed, on earth, the one above, the other below. That the two have one horizon, though they lie in different hemispheres. Therefore the path that Phaethon could not follow in the sky must necessarily, in passing here on the one side, pass there upon the other, as your own reasoning will have made clear. And I then said, Master, I may truly vow I never grasped so well the very point of which my wits were most astray just now, that the mid-circle of the highest heaven, called the equator, always lies between the sun and winter, and, for the reason given, lies as far north of this place at all times as the Hebrews, when they held Jerusalem, were wont to see it toward the warmer climes. But, if you please, I should be glad to know how far we have yet to climb, for the peak soars higher to heaven than my eye can go. And he said, Such is this mount that when a soul begins the lower slopes, it most must labor, then less and less the more it nears its goal. Thus, when we reach the point where the slopes seem so smooth and gentle that the climb becomes as easy as to float a skiff downstream, then will this road be run, and not before that journey's end will your repose be found. I know this much for truth, and say no more. His words were hardly found out when, from nearby, we heard a voice say, Maybe by that time you'll find the need to sit before you fly. We turned together at the sound, and there, close on our left, we saw a massive boulder, of which, till then, we had not been aware. To it we dragged ourselves, and there we found, stretched in the shade, the way a slovenly man lies down to rest, some people on the ground. The weariest of them, judging by his pose, sat hugged both knees, while his head, abandoned, dropped down between them halfway to his toes. Master, I said, look at that sorry one who seems so all let down. Were Sloth herself his sister, he could not be so far gone. That heap took heed, and even turned his head upon his thigh, enough to look at us. You climb it, then, if you're such a flash, he said. I knew him then, and all the agony that still burned in my lungs and raced my pulse did not prevent my going to him. He, raising his head just so barely when I stood by, drawled, So you really know now why the sun steers to the left of you across the sky? His short words and his shorter acts combined made me half smile as I replied, Belacua, your fate need never again trouble my mind. Praise be for that. But why do you remain crouched here? Are you waiting for a guide, perhaps? Or are you up to your old tricks again? Old friend, what good is it to climb? God's bird above the gate would never let me pass through to start my trials before my time. I must wait here until the heavens wheel past as many times as they passed me in my life, for I delayed the good size till the last. Prayer could help me, if a heart God's love has filled with grace should offer it. All other is worthless, for it is not heard above. But now the poet already led the way to the slope above, saying to me, Come now, the sun has touched the very peak of day. Above the sea, and night already stands with one black foot upon Morocco's sands.